So we see that the first thing that we need to do, as Naomi said, is change this to an improper fraction. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 5. That gives me 15 plus 4 is 19 over 5. I see that that's negative. I want to go ahead and keep that negative. It will help me remember later. It helps me remember to keep the details going. I'm going to also change the second one to an improper fraction as well. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8/3. Times 8/3. Sorry about this mess down here. All right, so we're getting ready to multiply. What is one thing that I would probably want to do before I multiply, though? Mia. See if we can factor it. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that that 3 of these numbers are prime numbers and only one of them is actually able to be factored, and that would be the 8. Now, I'm looking at this right here. My question to you is it even worth factoring the 8? Kip yes or Kip no. Is it even worth factoring the 8? Kip yes or Kip no. Is it even worth factoring the 8? No, it is not worth factoring the 8. Why not, Isaiah? Why is it not worth factoring the 8 here?
None of them have the same factorization or 4 or 2.
Yes, so nothing on the bottom is going to give me a factor of 4 or 2 that is common with this 8, so we can cancel out. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just do the multiplication. 19 times 8 off to the side. There's 2, carry the 7. Boom, 152. And it's 15. Top times top, bottom times bottom. And then there's one more thing that I really need, 2 more things actually, that I really need to do here at the end before I try to box this in. First is very specific to this problem, Mr. Ross. Go all the way back to that original problem. Anthony's remembering well from yesterday. Check to see if that's a good date or bad date. I indeed see this is a bad date, so my answer should be negative. And before I box this in, there's one more thing that I should check, just in case maybe we made a mistake along the way. ECs. Andrea? Yeah, check if we can simplify it. So theoretically, if we did all of our factoring right, there should be no simplification to do here. But I'm going to quickly run through my divisibility rules. They both don't end in 5 and 0. One of them does. They're both not even. If I add up 1, 5, and 2, I get 8. So they're not divisible by, both divisible by 3 and 9. This is probably pretty good. All right. Moving on to the next one. I see a division problem. What is the first thing that I need to do here? Mr. Matlock.
So first what you need to do, you switch it. No.
Switch what?
Switch it. The division sign to a multiplication sign.
I would love to switch the division sign to a multiplication sign, but the other part of that is switching the second number to its reciprocal. But this number doesn't have a reciprocal.
Can I?
Yes, you may.
Can I first change to an improper fraction?
Let's do that. Let's change this to an improper fraction. That's going to give me negative 24 over 5 divided by 8 over 3.
Okay, so.
Now what shall we do?
Okay, so. Now I'm turning.
Michael.
Oh. So next we now we switch it.
Now we're going to switch it. We'll switch it how? What do you mean by that?
So
Be more specific?
Flip
Flip the second and change it to a multiplication. When we flip the second, what is that called?
flipping the second.
Somebody else with some more precise mathematical language. Jacqueline. That's the reciprocal.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
So I'm flipping that over to multiply by its reciprocal here. And what do we want to do now? Kevin? Factor. I'm looking at my factors here. There's definitely some work I can do here. I've got 24. Now there's a bunch of different ways we can factor 24. 2 times 12, 6 times 4, 3 times 8. How do I want to factor 24 in this case? ECs, what's the best way to factor 24 in this particular problem? Why 8 times 3? Why not 6 times 4? Is it going to be able to cancel with this 3? That 3's on top with it. But definitely it can cancel with the 8 on the bottom. So let's go ahead and factor this into a 8 times 3. And we have the times 3 as well from that second number. And over here on the bottom, I have 5 times 8. Now, I can definitely factor that 8. That 8 can definitely factor into 4 and 2. Kip, yes or Kip, no. Do I want to factor that 8 into a 4 times 2?
No.
Mr. Posey, why not?
Because then it would be easy because you can just cross out both of the 8s because
All right, so what I hear him saying is that we want to leave it as an 8 because that way we can cancel out the 8s. That makes it more obvious there. So we have 3 times 3, which is 9. 5 times nothing, so that's just 5. Couple things to do before we move on and box in this answer, Bijan. Give me one.
Fix it to a, what do you call it, mixed number.
I don't like mixed numbers.
What?
You know that.
Mixed numbers are nice. Check if it's negative or positive.
Oh, check if they're negative or positive. Check our good dates or bad dates by looking where, Bijan? Where are we going to look?
At the original problem.
At the original problem. So at the original problem, I do see this is a bad date. So Bijan, this answer should indeed be
Negative.
negative. Now, the other thing that I should be checking before I box this answer, Mr. Posey?
you should also be checking if you could simplify.
Yeah. Looking for common factors that maybe we missed along the way. If there's any extra simplification to do here, with 9 and 5, there's definitely not. The only factors of 9 are 3 and 3. Obviously, 5 is not divisible by 3. So, let's go ahead and put all of this knowledge that we just created together and come down over here to our steps for multiplying and dividing mixed numbers.
If it's not an improper fraction yet, can you still flip the second?
All right, steps for multiplying and dividing mixed numbers. First things first. Sadie. Change to improper fraction. I'm going to use a delta here to stand for change to improper fractions.
What is that? I'm trying to think. Change.
Step number 2. Now, step number 2 is not a step that we have to do for all problems. We only had to do it for one of these 2 problems. Put on your thinking cap. What did we have to do for one of these problems, which was our second step? But we didn't necessarily have to do for the other. Andrea. Yeah, get the reciprocal of the second number. So this is, I'm going to stipulate that this is for division only. Flip the second number. And in parentheses, because I really liked the language that Andrea used, I'm going to write reciprocal here.
Reciprocal.
I'm sorry, that's really messy. But fortunately, you guys know what I wrote there, so it shouldn't be any problem. All right, so once we have turned the division into a multiplication on this second step, now all of our problems should be the same. They're both multiplications with improper fractions. What shall we do next? Jacqueline. Factoring. So we should be looking for factoring if possible. Factor, if possible. Sometimes we can't factor. For instance, that first problem that we did, there really wasn't any factoring to be done. By the way, you guys are doing this so well that I think we're going to end up with 6 steps. Next. Furby. Couldn't hear you. Good date or bad date? I think good date or bad date is a good place to go at some point. However, I think typically the way we've solved them, we've saved the good date or bad date for a little bit later. This is the simple step. The no-brainer. Multiply. Thank you for not talking and listening to her answer. Multiply. Top times top, bottom times bottom. So I'm going to put multiply here. And I'm going to put this reminder that it's top times top and bottom times bottom. If we've done our factoring, we've generally already combined them into one fraction with all the bottom stuff on the bottom. But just to make that a little bit more clear. Then, once we've done our multiplication, we said there were 2 things that we need to do. And I do them in a particular order. What's the next one, Kevin? Yeah, check good date or bad date by looking at the original. Check good date or bad date. Ross, make sure you're getting this down. Then you can answer questions. Check good date or bad date with the original problem. Once we've checked good date, bad date with the original problem, we've got the correct sign on our answer. There's one last thing that we always need to check on with any fraction problem. Evelyn, simplify. So I hear Michael calling out, but saying that he thought we did this when we factored. Yes, absolutely. If we do a good job factoring, we should never have to simplify. But sometimes we don't quite get it perfectly done. In fact, there's a problem that we did today on Together Time that I didn't get it done the first time, and so I had to actually simplify a little bit more. So simplify, this is if necessary, if needed. Mr. Posey.
Do you know how you like how you don't like mixed numbers? You like improper fractions?
Yes.
What if you had like 6 quarters and like you only need 4 quarters to make it $1? Would you just keep the 6 quarters, or would you get the paper $1 and get some stuff over?
I would spend the money, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. All right, so looking at this next problem, we have a mixed number subtraction. What is the first thing that we need to do for this mixed number subtraction? Please keep in mind that there's one thing in this world that I hate more than children talking while I'm talking.
Yeah, look at this.
Renee, what's the first thing we're going to do? Leave, change, switch. So I'm going to leave, change, switch, and I'm actually going to come up here and let's go ahead and just start with our steps. Our first step, we already told, was leave, change, switch. Now, is this for all additions and subtractions, or is this just for subtractions? Just for subtractions. We don't leave, change, switch additions. We leave, change, switched additions, then it would become subtraction. And you know how upset that would make me. So are you trying to upset me?
Yes. Yeah, we haven't seen you upset. We want to know what to expect.
All right. So looking at this problem, we're going to continue moving forward with this. What's the next thing that we need to do? Ricardo.
Okay, what I have to do is
So change them to improper fractions. I'm going to multiply 8 times 5. That's going to give me 40 is 43 over 8. And it's negative. So I'm going to try and keep track of that negative sign as long as I can. And for the 2 and 4/5, I'm going to multiply 2 times 5. And I'm going to add 4. That's going to be 14 over 5. I see that that's positive after the leave change switch. So let's go ahead and write that down. Our second step, you just told me, change to improper fractions. Next thing that we need to do. Genesis.
Don't you have to check if it's bad? Or did Lisa or this?
Okay, she's ready to look at like signs add or different signs subtract. We definitely do need to do that at some point. I usually wait one more step. What's in between, Oscar? Common denominator. So, we've already said the next 2 steps. Common denominators, Oscar says, and then after we've got common denominators, Genesis says we're going to do like signs add or different signs subtract. And when we do that, we're also going to take the sign of the larger number. So all right. Almost had a panic attack there. Like, slow down, Mr. Boots. You know you can't catch me. All right. And so we wanted our common denominators. The common denominator here is going to be 40, so I'm going to multiply by 5 over 5 here. That's just a multiplication of 1. That gives me negative 215 over 40. Multiply here by 8 over 8. And then it's going to give me 112 over 40. Next step we said was like signs add or different signs subtract. Elmer knows that this is different signs subtract. And so we're going to get 103 over 40. Take the sign of the larger number, which is negative. And there's one last thing that we should absolutely do for every fraction problem.
There, I didn't see if it's right.
Damien.
Like, answer the question.
Please, just get somebody.
Pardon? Simplify it if possible. In this case, there's no simplification to be done. Let's go ahead and write that up there in our steps. So if we look back at this later,
Simplify it.
we're going to write simplify if needed.
Wait, but I can't see.
So you'll notice there's no key points to our lesson today. Our summarization of our lesson today are these step-by-step directions that we've given ourselves so we can use those in our work. At this point, we are ready for some